Well, so Friday is here. Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to The Pulse. We are coming to you live from our studios here in Accra. Don't forget that this afternoon we are on your digital terrestrial TV because we are free to air. You can also catch us on DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 144. This is Joy News, independent, fearless, and credible journalism. This afternoon, Minority describes as false claims by the president that the country has so far spent about 17.7 billion Ghana cedis since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. Stay with us as we take you live to Parliament for updates on today's proceedings. I'm Blessed Sogan. Don't forget that the latter part of our show will be dedicated to the World Cup qualifiers. We'll bring you much more details on the draw. But The Pulse, as always, is brought to you by Global Communities Digni Lu, Affordable Safe Sanitation. This afternoon, we're streaming live on YouTube, and all our social media handles is JoyNews on TV. My personal handle is at Blessed Sogan. Stay for details. Also this afternoon, the minority in Parliament is actually described as false claims by President Akufo-Addo that the country has so far spent about 17.7 billion Ghana cedis since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the ranking member on the Health Committee, Kwabena Minta-Kando, the 2021 budget pegged the COVID-19 expenditure for the year 2020 at a little over 18 billion Ghana cedis. He insists government is concealing the actual amount spent on COVID so far. But in a sharp rebuttal, Health Minister Kweku Agyeman-Manu says the figures contained in the budget are provisional and do not reflect the actuals. Kwesi Parker-Wilson is our parliamentary correspondent, joins us with more details on this. First of all, Parker, what's the confusion about how much we've spent so far on COVID?
Blessed, you know that the minority has been very consistent on how much has been expended on the COVID-19 since its outbreak, and they have alleged that they believe the government may have misapplied some of the funds, or perhaps some corruption activities gone on with the revenue or the monies earmarked for COVID-19 pandemic. So consistently, they've been asking questions. About 3 weeks ago, you recall that they filed a question on that, and the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Joseph Osei-Owusu, actually shut it down, indicating that the Public Accounts Committee has the powers to, investigate some of these things. So when the report is before them, they can now go through that. But the minority is still concerned. Yesterday, in fact, last Wednesday, when the president appeared before us, he indicated that 17.7 billion Ghana cedis has so far been expended on COVID-19. According to the ranking member, if you look at the 2021 budget, now remember that the 2021 budget essentially report on the previous year. So the 2021 budget actually gives you the monies or revenues captured in the year 2020. So in the 2021 budget, it reported that the government spent a little over 18 billion Ghana cedis in 2020. Now, in 2022 budget, it again reported that for the year 2021, that is this year's budget, it reported that last year, government spent a little over 2.6 billion Ghana cedis. That is between January and September. So the remainder, that is about 6 months now, we are yet to get the amount that was spent on COVID-19. So if you add the year 2020 and 2021, if you do the tabulation, it gives you a little over 20 billion Ghana cedis used. And so it is not true or cannot be accurate that government has spent 17.7 billion Ghana cedis since the outbreak. And so that has been the concern of the ranking member on the Health Committee, Kwabena Minta-Kando, who has today been debating on the President's State of the Nation address delivered last Wednesday. But thankfully, the Health Minister himself was in the chamber. And it was quite interesting when the Health Minister was on his feet trying to interject, and yet the minority MPs wanted to prevent it. But however, the second Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Andrew Wesiama, gave him the opportunity to rebut. But he indicated that clearly the ranking member, that is Minta-Kando being the Jaboso NP, is misleading the House. According to the Health Minister, the expenditure or probably the figures captured in the budget are only provisional. It is after the auditors have gone through the figures, whether there's misreporting or underreporting or misinformation, that is where they can get you the actual figures. So it cannot be true that the president misled the nation and that what is captured in the budget is the actuals. And so in the subsequent days, the Ministry of Health would, after the audit and all the nuances within the figures that they have discovered, they will now put out the actual figures or the actual amount that has been expended on COVID-19 expenditure. So that was actually the controversy.
So, Parker, we also hear that Tempest fled in Parliament today.
I must say that
the Northern MP Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa was accused.
That's correct.
I mean, actually accused
Parliament started just as a normal day where the Deputy Majority Leader of the House, Alexander Afenyo-Makin, was expected to, read the business statement for next week and indicated to the House that hopefully next week, Tuesday, barring any hitches, Parliament will adjourn or go on recess for some time. Now, in the course, the members of Parliament are given the opportunity to raise concerns. So the ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Committee and also the Northern MP in the Volta region, Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, then raised a concern that in the last few weeks, in fact, the last 3 weeks, he's been raising concerns about the president's failure to appear before, to furnish members of Parliament with the staffing at the presidency. And this is actually contained in an act or a provision in the Presidential Office Act. And according to the act, at the beginning of the year, the president would have to furnish Parliament with the staffing, the amount being used at the office of the presidency, and all of that. The president hasn't done that. We are in April. Today is 1st of April. That means that we've been ushered into the second half of the year. And so the first quarter is gone. Now we are going into the second half of the year. The second quarter of the year, which is problematic. So Ablakwa, to quote him, said that the president has projected himself as a paragon of rule of law, and yet he continues to breach the law. This comment did not sit well with the Deputy Majority Leader, Alexander Afenyo-Makin, who was in the chamber, and he strongly disagreed with his colleague on the NDC side. In fact, he ordered him to withdraw those words, and that was where the chaos started. Afenyo-Makin suggested that the NDC MPs were engaging in reckless heckling and that using unprintable words for the president, and he is the president, and Adan Akufo-Addo is the president of the nation, and he must be accorded the needed respect. So you cannot say anything against the president and walk free like that. And so I must say the second deputy speaker was quite frustrated. He was trying to calm the two MPs and it wasn't working. You could hear him shout at a point that, Honorable Ablakwa, you could see the frustration in his face.
I get the picture.
So now, at the end of the day,
yes. So
they proceeded.
What transpired during the proceedings today when that exchange happened?
Mr. Speaker, Section 11 of the Presidential Office Act relates to an annual report. The head note is annual report. And it provides, Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I read, the President shall, within 3 months after the end of each financial year, submit to Parliament an annual report containing the following information. A, the number of presidential staff employed at the office. B, the rank or grade of such staff. And C, employees in the other public services assigned to the office. So, Mr. Speaker, today is the 1st of April. The President is in clear breach of the Presidential Office Act. I recall that some 3 weeks ago, I raised this matter and urged the Majority Leader to liaise with the presidency to present this annual report and comply with the Presidential Office Act. Mr. Speaker, that has not been done. We still do not have the annual report on the staffing status at the presidency. And Mr. Speaker, we cannot accept this as a house. If these delays continue, it undermines the authority of this institution. And I recall that virtually every year, the president is in breach of this provision, and I have to be screaming and crying and yelling before the presidency will comply. Every year, the records are there. You can check. If you Google, it's all over. And you wonder why it has to take a lot of hue and cry to get the president who likes to project himself as the paragon of the rule of law to be violating the laws of our country in such a violent manner.
You made your point. Why, Mr. President, who projecting? I mean, I wouldn't want to repeat that, but it's unnecessary. Yes, it is unnecessary to do that, to say that. Make the point. You cannot say that of the President of the Republic. You must be courteous in the language you use, and that I would insist. We as parliamentarians must know the appropriate words to use, and the words he used in describing the president is unacceptable, and he would have to withdraw. Mr. Speaker, they can engage in reckless heckling. They can decide not to have patience and tolerate. They can do so. I don't really mind. Second, you can't rise on a point of order when I'm in the dispatch board. Wait, when I finish and sit down, Mr. Speaker can give you the right. You can't do that. Ablakwa, you can't do that.
Honorable members, please.
Sit down. Stop misbehaving.
Please. Honorable, please. Honorable Brother, please. You take your seat. I'll call you.
Mr. President, a member of Parliament does not have the liberty to attack the integrity of the president. And I say that the words he used to describe the president, he must withdraw. Honorable Okudiato Ablakwa must withdraw that statement. He must withdraw. You cannot say the president described himself as blah blah. I will repeat it.
Also, Parker Wilson is still with us. Fortunately, we understand, Parker, as well, that officials of the National Health Insurance Authority was sacked from a meeting with members of the Health Committee after it emerged that less than 10% out of a total of about 2 billion Ghana cedis collected last year was deposited into the health fund, representing about some 127 million Ghana cedis. What's the explanation for all this that's been transpiring during the engagements, Parker?
Blessed, the ranking member on the health committee in the last few weeks has been making the point that cash and carry is back, and basically it's because the health insurance scheme fund is depleted, and that the service providers are not being paid. Reason the cash and carry is back because when patients visit the facilities, the service providers are demand cash from them because the fund is not paying the service provider. So when the National Health Insurance officials appeared before the committee today to go through their formula and all of that, the matter was raised, and they go through their document, and the members of the committee wanted to know how much has been realized or realized for the year 2021. According to the ranking member, a little over 2 billion was realized, and the question was asked, how much then was deposited into the schemes fund? And again, we are told by the ranking member that a little over 127 million was deposited into the fund. That is woefully inadequate, less than 10% of it. So the committee was clear that if you don't go and do what is right, we will not listen to you and go through your files. The ranking member, Kobna Mintakando, held a press conference, and this is what he's been saying.
As we have always indicated, to know how much the government of Ghana has collected in the name of the National Health Insurance Scheme with respect to 2021. As part of the practices of the House, the National Health Insurance Authority is supposed to appear before us every year, especially with respect to their formula. Fortunately, today, as part of the procedures, they appeared before the Parliamentary Select Committee on Health. They presented a document to us, which is titled National Health Insurance Authority, National Health Insurance Fund Allocation Formula 2022. We checked page 10, table 4.3.2, and by their own records, the government of Ghana has collected 2.056 billion Ghana cedis in the name of National Health Insurance in the year 2021. 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, listen to the amount that has been released to the fund. I repeat, they have collected 2.056 billion Ghana cedis, and they have released 127 million, less than 10% of the amount collected. Less than 10% of the amount collected in the year 2021. Again, when we considered the 2022 budget, of which an Appropriation Act has been passed, we approved an amount of about 3.3 billion Ghana cedis. Now, when you look at their formula, on page 25, they are formulating their formula around 2.6 billion, whilst the budget or the Appropriation Act has approved 3.3 billion. Clearly, there is some disparity. When we asked them, the response we had was that they have received instructions to cut down this budget by 30%. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't make laws on the floor of the House for people to sit in their offices to alter the law. So, with these two reasons, we asked them to go back and come with the minister responsible for finance. Because the law of the National Health Insurance Act is clear that when you collect these monies, you are supposed to lodge it into the National Health Insurance Fund within 30 days after the collection. And you are supposed to appear before the Parliament, that is on the floor of the House, every 6 months to account for the money within the year. So with these two reasons, we have asked the officials from the National Health Insurance Authority to go back and bring the minister responsible for health, the minister responsible for finance, to explain why they have not lodged the 2.056 billion into the National Health Insurance Fund.
Well, there's a new report by the Alliance for Green Revolution in Africa, AGRA, and auditing firm KPMG, which has criticized the African government for what it says is the lack of action against climate change. The Agribusiness Outlook Report 2022 expresses concern that the African governments are not investing adequate resources in dealing with the menace, and enough action is not being taken to avert the impact of climate change on farming. The report identifies difficulties in assessing finance as the biggest challenge that the agribusinesses face. Let's speak now to Bashiru Musa, who's the programs officer at Agra, for more on this. Thank you, Bashiru, for joining us. So help us understand what the Agribusiness Outlook report is all about, first of all, and why the focus this year on issues of climate change.
Thank you very much for having me. Basically, the Agribusiness Outlook report is a result of a survey conducted on captains of industry to explore opportunities, growth potentials, and the challenges, facing the agribusiness ecosystem in Africa. Essentially, the report basically is a barometer that provides insight into the priority areas of interest to the private sector that, if resolved, would boost their investment into the agricultural sector and make them more competitive. And so this year's report is captioned Agribusiness in Unprecedented Times, Challenges and Opportunities for CEOs in Africa. The overall feedback that we are gathering basically from the survey is that the unexpected growth opportunity that the COVID-19 provided or presented to the growing companies was not planned for. Hence, systems, infrastructure, technologies are not adequate to support and manage business expansions. And so this particular report provides some kind of highlights into the challenges and opportunities that are facing SMEs, especially in the agribusiness arena.
Now, we know that the report actually lists a number of priority areas that attention should be paid to. Can you share some of them with us?
Yeah, thank you very much. The emphasis basically is on innovative financing models for the agricultural sector. Just like you rightly mentioned, I mean, one of the serious casualties in terms of, the agribusiness landscape is access to finance. SMEs believe that blended finance is the way out of these, problems that we're currently facing. And so they actually believe that if we can really, support the SMEs with access to finance that looks at how we can really reduce the risk, embedded in agriculture, it's going to, go a long way to help them to be able to, leverage some financing and be able to make more investment in expanding their businesses, and then also trying to look at reducing the risk factors in the agricultural sector.
I guess your report is not oblivious of the fact that many governments, as we speak, are having difficulties with financing. Fiscal spaces are tight all across Africa, which calls for perhaps a public-private initiative to fund some of these developmental projects. How about that too?
Yeah, that is also very important, because if you look at the landscape is very big. The government alone cannot do it. That is why we are looking at encouraging public-private partnership to really be able to scale up some of these very good innovative models that the SMEs are currently implementing. It will interest you to know that one of the difficulty, like I mentioned, is access to finance. But then if we have a structure that, looks at blended finance, for instance, where risk is factored into the equation, it provides for, the need for agricultural insurance, providers to be in the equation. We can also have the banks, the government providing the enabling environment, and the private sector who can really, match up, ramp up, and be able to make the best determination in terms of, what kind of financing has to go into what kind of business. And so for us, the best way to do it is to foster closer collaboration between these entities in a form of PPP, public-private partnership.
And let's talk about Ghana. This is one nation that many believe is fortunate, looking at the fact that we have the Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat here. Are there any measures that the government could take in leveraging on these opportunities that we have with the AFTA?
Yeah, AFTA, on record, is the largest continental market which basically we're talking about 1.3 billion people with a combined GDP of about $3.4 trillion. This is an enormous opportunity for Africans. And so the implication is that, you know, the agreement creates one of the largest demand pool markets for Africans. And so AfCFTA agreement also creates an opportunity for domestic reforms and trade liberalization, which we are advocating for. But then I think one of the biggest challenges has to do with the removal of non-tariff barriers, you know, which is one of the greatest threats to realizing the potentials of the AfCFTA. And so what we are encouraging government across Africa to do is to look at, you know, in terms of concrete steps, what can we do in our own small corner to reduce or remove the non-tariff barriers which businesses, especially the SMEs, are basically complaining about.
So do you have any other recommendations that we could use or some of the other approaches that we could adopt in doing things differently so as to improve the sector?
Thank you. I think based on what I've said before, the report basically is very clear in terms of the way forward. What really the business captains are really asking for is for government to be very deliberate in promoting blended finance, you know, where, you know, there is PPP, public-private partnership, getting everybody into the fold to really move the agenda of promoting SMEs, you know, up. And then secondly, basically what is coming from the SMEs is also that we are encouraging them to adopt different growth strategies based on their specific circumstances. For instance, we are talking about strategic partnership, acquisition, market penetration, product development to really be able to be more competitive in Africa.
But beyond these measures, how about the private sector itself? I mean, those in the industry, those directly involved with the various agri-businesses across the country. What are they supposed to be doing to complement government's efforts?
Exactly. So for instance, one of the things, I mean, the shocks that came about as a result of the COVID, it has really exposed, you know, most businesses that really, you know, we are not, you know, like crisis ready. And so one of the areas that we need to factor in our operations is that there could be good times and bad times, and we need to plan. So physical planning is very, very important, especially in this time of COVID. And so we are, you know, advising businesses to open up, seek for professional advice in terms of, you know, growth opportunities, and then also in terms of analyzing the challenges within the African, you know, space, so far as agribusiness is concerned. And then also try to seek for, you know, business development services, very specific to their challenges, so they can, you know, really be able to find, you know, answers to some of the challenges affecting their business.
Bashiru Musa, I'm grateful that you've been able to join us today on The Pulse.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Now, you were all excited when the Black Stars of Ghana qualified for the World Cup. But it's time now to know what our fate is and what the fate of other nations are as well going into this tournament. Fortunate to have George Addo Jr., who's with the Joy Sports team, joining us for a special coverage of the World Cup, FIFA World Cup 2022. The draws are happening now. So, George, take us away.
Yes, we're looking forward to a special 60 minutes where we try to guide you through the process of how 32 teams who will be representing at the World Cup 2022 will be split into 8 groups. Of course, 4 teams in each of those. Remember, Ghana is in pot 4, and it means we're going to be playing against some top guns in the world of football. We're going to be in Doha, where Gary L. Smith will be connecting with us, telling us what is happening on the ground before during and after. We will go around the continent to talk about the other African countries who are making it to the World Cup alongside Ghana. We'll give you all the analysis, the technicalities that you need to understand. And after all is done, we will talk about who we were drawn with and whether we have a great chance of making it out of the group. Remember, the last time Ghana was in, of course, the World Cup, it wasn't good for us. We're knocked out in the group stage, and so it's important that we get a good draw and move on to the next. All of this coming up, plus your comments, because we're absolutely interactive, will be across this channel, Joy News, and on Joy Prime as well.
And that's George Ado Jr. for you. Expect a lot of analysis on this. We'll be also crossing you live to Qatar to bring you the very latest. But for now, here on The Pulse, that's all we have for you. My name is Blessed Sogan. Don't forget that you can get updates on our running stories on myjoyonline.com.